friends. So we do a ton of audits and discoveries at Aha Media Group, and I'm always thinking about how you evaluate content, particularly when it's in a vacuum. So let's say you don't really know what the content was prepared for or why it was an important business asset for the company. It eludes you. You're not really sure how it fits into their overall content strategy. What is the thing that you look for when you're evaluating a piece of content in a vacuum? And so I heard this from Rachel Honeyman, a content strategist that I interviewed recently. She said, the first thing I look for is clarity. Can I actually understand what the piece says and what the language behind it is? I don't necessarily need to understand it as a business asset for the company if I'm looking at it as a future customer or a reader. I just need to understand what it's saying. And I think that that's a really valuable piece of advice. So what's a good metric for knowing if your content's understandable? Because you can run it through Hemingway for reading levels. You can figure out if it's appropriate for your voice and tone, but how do you know if it's clear? And listen, let me tell you something. The best way to know if your content is clear is to read it out loud to yourself and also ask yourself, if I was about 15 years old, would I understand this content? Have I explained complex terms? Am I not assuming that my audience knows exactly what I'm talking about the minute that they land on my webpage or open up my ebook and read it? And so I think these two tips that you can use, reading it out loud, just to hear the cadence and the flow and to make sure it just sounds as simple as possible, is critical. I know that we think that jargon is the kind of thing that, connects us to our audience and makes them think that we're smart, but that's not why people are connecting to your content. They don't need to think you're smart. In fact, they know you're smart if they can understand your content. That's the most important thing for you to impress upon them, is that you're helpful and that you're kind and you're empathetic to the fact that they need this piece of information to make a decision. So make sure your content is clear by asking yourself, can I just read this content out loud and understand what it's talking about? And if I were 15 years old and didn't understand certain terms, have you explained them to me in such a way that you've given me either metaphors or put me in a situation where I understand what you're talking about? I'll see you next time. And from here on in, your content is always clear.